Hello and welcome to this video on bias. It's a set of questions that we're trying to determine which type of bias we have. As a quick review here, there's some different types listed up above. So non-response bias, that's where you ask a question of a group. Maybe you've randomly selected a bunch of people to be in your survey and you send out a survey or you mail or email a survey or something, but only a small percentage of them respond, right? You usually should have a large percentage of your responses to come in before you could actually use that data. If it's small, then that's non-response bias. You've only gotten some of it. You don't know the real picture of the whole population. We have voluntary response. This is like when you walk through the airport and you get, like you go through customs or something, and then they have a little button that you could hit that says a smiley face, frowny face, and you can choose not to hit it at all, right? That's voluntary response. Just like if you were at a restaurant and they had a little comment card sitting on the table, you don't have to answer it. You can choose to whether you want to or not. So usually the only people who answer those comment cards are people who are really angry or people who are being, just goofing around even, or, most of the people don't even answer those. So you're not really getting a good look at the whole population. You're only getting a certain type of person who responds to those. So they're voluntarily responding, choosing whether to be in your sample or not, which is not good. Convenience sample, this is where maybe you just hang out in the book locker room and just find anybody you can find. Or you stand in front of a grocery store and just, interview the people that you see walking through. There's all kinds of those kind of things, right? Where it's just really convenient for you, but you're not randomly selecting people from the population, which is what you should always be doing. Under coverage, this is maybe you're using technology, or there's some way that you are getting a group of people out of the population, but you're missing other groups. Maybe you're missing the poor because they don't have electronic devices, or like in the old days, it used to be the telephone, some people didn't have a telephone, so they missed that group, right? But it could be more than that. Different. Maybe you only surveyed different parts of town. You didn't use the whole town, so you're missing different age groups, or maybe different race groups or things like that. And then there's response bias, where the way you word the question influences the way the person will answer it. So you're not supposed to try to influence them. You're supposed to just let them make up their own opinion, right? So response bias. All right, so let's go through them. Number one, according to an article on CNN website, 52% surveyed teenagers had never had sexual intercourse. A very large random sample of 16,262 high school students were surveyed through the website. So you might be thinking, wow, 16,000, that's great. There's a lot of kids. This must be a good survey. So this 52% must be really accurate. But the trouble is they used the CNN.com website to collect that data. So now you have to think about what's your population. They stated up here that this is teenagers, right? So they're trying to figure out if high school teenagers, are having sexual intercourse or not. So then the population of high school teenagers is not being represented. You're really just representing high school teenagers, or at least people who say they're teenagers, who are on the CNN website and who have decided to respond to this, right? So there's a couple things wrong. One, you're getting under coverage, right? Under coverage because you're only getting those people who go to the CNN website. So that's not the whole population of teenagers. You're also getting a voluntary response. I should have said and voluntary response, because the people online can choose to do this survey or not. They don't have to do it, right? So this is not a good survey at all. That's why I always get mad at the TV in the morning, because they're always spouting off, we saw this survey and that survey and these results and those results, and they're taking them as fact when really they're just opinions and they really mean nothing. They don't represent the whole population. And that's really bad that the news is doing that these days. It's really bad. Anyway, whoops, went too far. Number 2, when eating dinner at a restaurant, you notice a card sitting next to you. Oh, I already talked about this one, huh? So this could be the card on the restaurant sitting on the table, and they ask you to write a few questions, right? A survey. I had one pop up today on my computer. It just popped up and said, "What do you think about our website?" And yes, no, maybe, right? So this is all voluntary bias and response bias a little bit. A lot of times in the restaurant, you're worried that when you put it down, the card down, that the person collecting it is going to see your response, right? So if you put something bad down, they're going to know that you badmouthed them, and you don't want that. So just by not setting it up anonymously, they're getting a response bias, and also because you get to choose whether to do it or not, that's voluntary. So that's all these little like pop-ups on your screen. How are we doing? And rate us, and the little smiley face buttons at the airport, and these little comment cards. I mean, they're everywhere, right? People push those out everywhere, but to be honest, they're worthless. The people who are looking at those really shouldn't be using them. Number 3, you send out 100 emails to high school students and you receive 10 responses. Well, obviously that's under coverage. Sorry, not under coverage, non-response bias. You didn't get a lot of responses, right? 10 is not enough out of 100. That's only 10%. You should be like getting, if you're going to use it, you should have like 80% or 90% of your responses. And if you don't, you have to go out and you have to get those people to answer you. You have to email them again, or you have to go find them in person. You have to do something to get those people to answer your questions. Number 4, the leadership at ASIJ High School are concerned that students are vaping. I actually caught someone vaping in the bathroom last year. Ha ha ha. And doing it at school. Well, they are, but they used to until we caught them. So the associate principal randomly selects 40 students, finds them during activity period, and asks them if they vape. Well, here's the key is they're asking them, I don't know how. If they did it as anonymous, then it would be okay. But this makes it sound like they just ask them in person, do you vape? And of course, if you ask someone that in person, they're going to say no. Do you take drugs, or do you have a sexual transmitted disease, or anything embarrassing or that you're going to get in trouble for, or anything like that. People aren't going to answer honestly, so you have to find a way to make it anonymous. So this would be response bias. You are influencing the way they answer based on how you ask the question or what you said in the question. Number 5. The following question is posed to adults in the U.S. Given humanity's great tradition of exploration, do you favor continued funding for the space flights? Well, this is another response bias. Why? They didn't need this. Given humanity's great tradition of exploration, right? By saying that, you're influencing the way that person's going to respond. You're like, we used to, explore all the time, and it's a great tradition of Americans to explore, and of people in the world. So let's continue our exploration with spaceflight, don't you think? That's response bias. They should leave that first part out and just say, do you favor continue funding for space flights? And that's it. Leave the rest of it off. Number 6. Tests were conducted using 40 college student volunteers at Texas Women's University to study the fat content of the food in the refrigerators of U.S. adults. All right. So, this is all about obesity in the United States and things like that, right? So first of all, we have 40 college student volunteers, and they're using college students and volunteers to represent U.S. adults, right? U.S. adults. That's doesn't match up. If you're doing U.S. adults, you have to randomly select U.S. adults and go chase them down and look in their refrigerators. If you do college students at this one university, then your population is college students at this university, and that's it. You can't expand it or extrapolate it into a bigger population than what you really surveyed. So that's under coverage. You were trying to get all U.S. adults, but you only got the people in this college. So that's under coverage. You didn't get all the US adults. And then it's also convenient sampling a little bit because you got volunteers. You didn't get a random sample, right? So even if you just wanted to represent the college, right? If you were just talking about the college, this still would be convenience because you took volunteers. It wasn't random. Number 7, the article study provides new data on the extent of gambling by college athletes. It reported that 72% of college football and basketball players had bet money at least once since entering college. They're worried about like people throwing a game, or maybe, you're not supposed to bet on yourself, right? Because then you could influence how you play the game. But anyway, this conclusion was based on a study in which copies of the survey were mailed to 3,000 athletes at 182 Division I institutions. 25% responded. So we got some problems. 25% only responded. So, that's a non-response bias. The surveys are up with this. The surveys were mailed to these people, these athletes, and then they're supposed to mail it back. That's voluntary response. They can choose to mail it back or not. So that's a problem, right? And you also have to worry about is this really anonymous, or not? Because this could be talking about them cheating, and they could get in big trouble for this. So maybe they're not going to answer honestly unless they're really, really sure it's anonymous, right? So that's a problem too. So this has a lot of problems to it, right? Non-response, and it's voluntary, and it could be a little bit of like response bias because they're worried about getting in trouble. All right. Number 8, I think this is the last one. A researcher stands in Nogawa Park and polls people as they walk by. That's definitely a convenient sample, right? It's just very convenient to stand there and ask people, which you see people do this all the time in the United States, or in other places too. They just stand there and people walk by and they ask them a question and have them sign a petition, or they do stuff like this. But anyway, this would be convenient sample. You always, like, randomness is the big thing in this section of the year. And whenever you do a survey or you collect data, or even if you go measure it yourself, you want that to be random from your population. So whatever the population is you're trying to find out something about, you need to randomly pick those people out of that population. That's the key. Random, random, random. Okay, that's it.